is more nervous than I've ever been in my life. And I want to apologize ahead of time because I'm not an interviewer by any means, but I'm so happy to be talking to you. So of course I said immediately yes to anything they asked. But you write about being able to find the question in the question. So hopefully you can find the question in my rambling. Oh yes, but before we begin, I thought it'd be nice to honor the spirit of it's Shark Week, motherfuckers. And maybe we could each just tell a lame joke.
Tell a lame joke? Okay. What is red and bad for your teeth?
What?
A brick.
Right.
You got one?
I got one. Okay, so mine is, how many mice does it take to screw in a light bulb?
How many?
2, but how you get them in there? That's a thinker. Did you want to tell the Shark Week motherfuckers story again?
I mean, I think we should.
I think we should.
Yeah. So, I wrote this book, and part of really the impetus for the book was the thing that I get asked the most, whether I'm traveling within Michigan or outside of Michigan, is how do I stay positive when things feel so heavy? When in my first term, I survived a polar vortex, negative 55-degree wind chills. I survived 28 recall attempts, survived demonstrations for racial justice in the wake of George Floyd's murder, a pandemic, and also a plot to kidnap and kill me. And understandably, people say, why do you still feel optimistic? Why did you run for a second term? Is that a rational thing to do? And so I thought, I want to put some light out into the world. I knew that with an important presidential election this year, it would feel heavy at times, it would be hard, and I thought if I've learned some things in my life that'll help make your load a little lighter, give you a laugh maybe at my expense, or share some inspiration that's gotten me through these tough times, or simply give you something light to read during a heavy time. That was really what I wanted to accomplish. And so this book is really 10 chapters of things that I've learned over my life and that I've used in these last 6 years to navigate the most unimaginable sets of circumstances. And so chapter 10 is called The Happy Warrior, Be a Happy Warrior. And what this comes from is when I first ran for governor in 2018, I was really lucky to have the support of Emily's List. Emily's List, great organization that helps pro-choice Democratic women. And I was getting ready for my first debate of the gubernatorial campaign. And Emily's List sent a debate coach in to come chat with me. And he gave me some wonderful tips. They sent a man of all people, which I thought was kind of funny from Emily's List, but he was wonderful.
They're better at explaining things.
I knew this was going to be one of the most fun ones I've done, and I'm right. But his big tip was, the happy warrior wins every debate. The person who looks like they're having the most fun almost always wins the substance of any debate. So remember to be the happy warrior. And his suggestion to me was, when you go in for the debate, go right up to your podium. And they always have blank paper and a pen, so you can take notes during the debate. But as soon as you get there, put a big smiley face at the top of your paper to remind you to smile. Now, how many women feel like smiling when someone tells you to smile? Probably none of us. And so I'm like, I'm not doing that. But I got to figure out what's going to keep me happy and loose. And so I'd been to a Kevin Hart stand-up show in Detroit.
Of course.
And one of the guys who opened for him, this man, Niam Lin, who was one of his writers too, did this spiel, and he said, women today are a lot bolder than they used to be. Like when you want to get with your girlfriend, but she's having her period, back in the day, they'd be very demure, and they would say something like, oh, my Aunt Flo is in town. Because they wouldn't want to say, I'm on my period. He said, women today, they own it. They own it. Women today, you say, I want to come over, and she's on her period, she's going to say, you're not coming over, because it's Shark Week, motherfucker. And I thought, oh my, this is the happy warrior. This is going to keep me happy. So in my debate, I went up to the podium and I wrote SW, MF, which kept me loose and happy. But we were testing the microphones before our debate, and each of us could have 20 people or 10 to 20 people in the audience on each of our sides. And I had my family and friends, and they all heard this story. He had a bunch of, his supporters on his side, and they said, we'd like you both to test your microphones. And so they said, Attorney General, will you test yours? He was the sitting Attorney General at the time, and he said, this is Bill Schuette on duty.
Oh, it rhymes.
There you go. Yes.
Fun.
Catchy.
Yeah.
And it was dead silent. His mic worked, and so they said, "You, Senator Whitmer, go ahead and test yours." And I said, "I'm Gretchen Whitmer. Welcome to Shark Week." And everyone on my side started cracking up. His people started laughing too because they thought I was out of my mind. And I think I won the debate before it even started because, I was laughing and having fun, and he could not figure out what the hell was going on with me. So.
Because it's Shark Week, motherfuckers. I think we all need that stationery later. SWMF. Okay, so number one, thank you for this book because it's a really great handbook for how to kind of be a Gretchen Whitmer in this world, and we could certainly use some more. And to me, it's like you really are the epitome of the strong woman that I'm pretty sure my mother has always wanted me to be. You're positive and intelligent and strong and resilient and compassionate. And it was not lost on me, all the references to a great cocktail or beer in your book. As a gal who appreciates cocktail, I appreciated that. So first of all, do you think a lot of your strength comes from being from the Midwest? And why are we the toughest people ever?
Yeah, you probably picked up on the fact that Cecily also is from the Midwest.
Our beautiful vowel sounds tonight.
Yes. Well, that's why she did such a great job, portraying me on Saturday Night Live.
I tried.
First, let me just say this, when Cecily did the bit on Saturday Night Live, I was not up to see it, but my phone blew up the next morning, and I was like, what happened? And I saw it, and it was so funny. But she was drinking Labatt's in it, which is Canadian. And so I sent her a bunch of Michigan beer, and we bonded over that. So,
in my defense, I want to say that growing up, when people were down and out, they drank Labatt's. It was a lot. That's what I drank as a teenager in the local bowling alley. So, and that's kind of how I felt you were feeling during COVID.
But she's been very generous. I sent it to her, and she's so generous with her time. I can't believe she's sitting here with me. So, thank you.
I'm thrilled to be here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Wow, that's awesome.
So let's talk about your kind of specific brand of feminist strength. So to quote Donald Trump's play on music from the RNC, this is a man's world. Even though we are now living in this exciting time of hopefully electing our first female president, second try. We're doing it. Yes. But so there's still, to me, kind of feels like there's less of a blueprint for how to kind of be the most powerful, effective, strong woman. And you really do embody that. So I want to kind of go through that. And starting with your physical strength, you love to rock a leather jacket, and you are missing teeth.
Uh-huh.
Can you tell us about that?
Well, it's not because I was playing hockey, but in the book, there's a picture of me without one of my front teeth. When I was in church camp in middle school, we went, for some reason, from Michigan to West Virginia for church camp. And we were playing a game, and the woman who was guarding the base that I was running to was very enthusiastic about tagging me out and pushed me so hard I went right into the ground and knocked out my front teeth. This is in a section of the book where I talk about nicknames and not letting someone else define you. One of my favorite nicknames, though, is one that my dad gave me after that incident. I came home in a wheelchair because I also had 32 stitches in my knee. No front teeth. My dad had just paid for braces to fix the gap between the two front teeth I knocked out. And I was just dreading seeing my dad because he spent all this money on my teeth and they were gone. And he just looked at me and said, "Gravity, Gretchen." And So it's one of my favorite nicknames, but
Yeah.
I accept that nickname even though he gave it to me, at my expense. I accept it because he gave it to me with love. Unlike, other nicknames that I've gotten over the years.
That's a better
little
one,
bit
yes.
about. Yeah.
Gravity Gretchen, that's good. I broke my finger today, I think, so.
No, she's going to get it checked out
Moving
after
a
the show
suitcase. So Gravity Cecily. I'll think of a better one by the end of this. So again, on your strength, I want to talk about your resilience, which is like the biggest, the true Gretch about you. So when I think about a career in politics or policy, like I can't imagine I would burn out very quickly because of all the kind of heartbreaking losses that you go through and how hard it would feel to keep showing up and show up the next day. And I'm thinking especially about this story you tell early on about the rape insurance bill in Michigan, and I was wondering if you could go into that a little bit.
Yeah, happy to. And it's so unfortunately it's a story that resonates with people all across our country and feels even more, I think, important right now. So in 2013, on December 11th, and I remember the date exactly because it was my Gramma Nino, who I opened the book talking about. She was a phenomenal woman. I had two great, fabulous grandmothers, Gretchen and Esther. I am Gretchen Esther Whitmer, but Esther we called Nino. She turned 100 on December 11th, 2013. Oh. And I was happy to be calling her and saying happy birthday, but it also was a really hard day for me. It was a day that in the Michigan legislature, so I was the Senate minority leader. I was the top Democrat in the state Senate, the first woman ever to lead a caucus in the Senate. And my predecessor in this job, Rick Snyder, who was the governor in Michigan back then, had vetoed legislation that would have required that women and our families pre-purchase an abortion rider in the event we ever need health care that requires abortion services. So you have to pre-plan for an unplanned event, essentially, by buying something that didn't even exist in the marketplace. It was just a cruel additional barrier between women and our ability to access the health care that we need and deserve and should be able to access. And my predecessor, to his credit, Republican governor, vetoed it. But then the legislature and a couple of interest groups used something under Michigan law, which is you can go straight to the people and collect signatures and bypass the governor altogether. You just put an issue in front of the legislature and a simple majority can change the law for everyone in the state. And the governor neither signs it nor vetoes it because they have no ability to impact the legislation. And so they were doing an end run on this Republican governor, and me, I was the Senate minority leader. It was coming up for debate on the floor. They wouldn't hold a single committee hearing. So no woman or medical professional ever had an opportunity to testify on what this new legislation and law would mean for people. And so I knew the only opportunity I would have would be at the microphone that day. I was talking to one of my colleagues who he and his wife had been desperately trying to start a family through IVF and had gone through all the treatments and had so many heartbreaking moments. And I asked him if he would share his story on the floor, thinking it might impact the Republicans who were pushing this legislation to see a man talk about it who desperately wanted to be a parent but couldn't, and that it would impact him and his wife. They had just had a miscarriage that didn't complete at home, and they had to go to the hospital to have it completed, which we used to call a DNC. It's an abortion. We got to use the word. But I think that it could have really resonated, but it was too hard for him. He said, I can't do it. It's too emotional for me. I can't tell the story. And I was walking back to my desk, and I thought, how can I ask him to tell his story when I have a story that I'd never shared publicly? And I thought, I was debating whether or not to share that I had been raped when I was in college. And I decided, literally while I was speaking, because my name went up on the board and I had a certain amount of time in which to speak, and I went to the microphone and started giving my prepared remarks, and I thought, forget it, I'm going to tell the story. And I shared that I had been raped when I was in college, and had I become impregnated from my attacker, at least I would have known that I could make whatever decision I needed to make for me in the wake of that. And if this new law had become law, I wouldn't have, it would impact me and every woman who found herself in this situation. And the vote went up on the board, and it didn't change a single vote. Every Republican voted in favor of it, and one of my fellow Democrats did too. And I remember the board closed, and one of my colleagues from the other side of the aisle came over, and he said, you know, I heard your remarks, and it made me think of my wife, who also was raped in college, and I wish I could have voted the way you did. And I was so mad when he said that, because I thought, how dare you come up to me and say you think I cast the right vote when you wouldn't cast it? You know, and I left the legislature that night, and I realized I needed to call my dad, because he was going to see this in the news, and I had never told him. And I went home, and you know, I had that conversation, went home, went to bed, and I woke up the next day. I was about as depressed as I've ever been, because I just bared my soul to the world, and it didn't make a single bit of difference. But by the time I got to my office, and I live in East Lansing, and the Capitol's in Lansing, so it's like an 8-mile drive. By the time I got into the office, my staff had told me we'd been inundated with hundreds of phone calls and faxes and emails of people who thanked me for doing that and shared their stories. And it made me feel like I just did this, and it was hard, but it had value. And I tell that story because fast forward 10 years later to December 11th of 2023, as a sitting governor, never would have imagined I'd be running for governor that 10 years beforehand, but as a sitting governor and a new Democratic majority in our legislature, I got to sign the repeal of that law.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I wanted to share that story in a chapter that's called Never Give Up, because it took 10 years. It was a long, hard fight. It shouldn't have taken that long, and it's hard to believe in these moments that it does. But these fights are worth having because we can win them. And if we can win them in a state like Michigan, we can win them all across this country. And so, never give up.
Love that. And this is, when you started, I think this is when there were more men named John than women.
Yes, so in the Michigan Senate, I also talk about, there were more men named John in the Michigan Senate than women at that time.
What an exciting thing to find out. You say later in the book, you have a thick skin and a short memory, so you don't hold a grudge, but it seems like you are able to hold on the important part of the grudge, which is your values, and it's sort of maybe not the key figures or particular slights. And it just, speaking of like that anger that you're holding on to, you mentioned in the book, you said American women are angry. And I think that is absolutely true right now, because I know it lights a fire in me personally when you're watching the news and they're like, how long will abortion be important in this election or something? Like, when will you stop talking about this, you girls? And on Truth Social, soon I think we're gonna stop talking, we're gonna stop caring about abortion.
That's what they tell us.
It's just, it's very insulting. I don't have a question about this. It's just really, we are angry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's hard to believe that in 2024, we're at a situation where the women of my daughter's generation have fewer rights than I had my whole life. It is hard to believe that. It is hard to, see women who are in their 70s showing up at rallies saying, I can't believe I still have to fight for this, and I'm grateful that so many are, and I'm optimistic that, ultimately we're gonna be successful. But I think it really hit me. There was a woman who, was maybe a little bit older than I am, but who said, I've just resigned myself to the fact that I'm gonna have to fight for this for the rest of my life. And I've accepted that, and I'm in it. And even when we have some successes, we cannot slow down. And we're on the cusp of what I think could be an incredible new chapter in this country. But the reality of what our Supreme Court looks like and cases that are teed up means even if all of a sudden we are able to celebrate a victory after November 5th, we're gonna all have to continue to be in this fight. And it is maddening. But it also, I have found on the hardest days that it's an understandable inclination to just want to pull the covers over your head.
Yeah. Yes.
But I have found I'm so much better off when I actually jump in deeper than when I turn away from the tough stuff. And I hope that, you know, we can all do the self-care we need and draw the boundaries we need, but also we cannot disengage, because this is high stakes in this moment, and the most fundamental ability to make our own decisions is right at the center of a lot of it.
Yeah. Yes. We're staying tuned and we're staying angry. So there's a lot to be angry about, but a lot of your book is spent, like you already mentioned, talking about the importance of kindness and seeking to understand others and forgive them their mistakes. If you talk about working with your former opponents. So how do you work with people who are different from you, and how do you get things done with them?
Well, you know, one of the things that is very true about governors and anyone in a, you know, executive role as opposed to like a legislative role is, at the end of the day, you got to get shit done. You know, you can't. I am as capable as anyone of throwing a counterpunch, but it doesn't often help me do what I need to do for the people of Michigan in this role to do that. And so I have gotten very good at compartmentalizing and also finding humor or the light in really dark or heavy things. When in 2019, I was on an international economic development trip, and I was dealing with this totally Republican-controlled legislature in Michigan. Very challenging group of folks, very, I think, very quick to call names and make all sorts of threats and, you know, throw gas on the fire. And I, of course, while I'm capable of doing that, could never engage that way, because I know I got to get a budget done, I got to get these people back to a table and negotiate with me. But I was on this trip, and I got a text message from the Senate Majority Leader, and it said, "You've probably seen the news. I would like an opportunity to apologize in person when you're back." So I'm like, oh, what the heck happened? And so I grabbed my chief of staff. I'm like, can you figure out what's going on here? And she's like, oh, okay. So he was in a private conversation with some students on one of the campuses in Michigan, and had called me, said that, you know, how horrible I am to work with, and that I am on the batshit crazy spectrum, was what he said. There are a lot of problems with that phrase. You don't need to explain it, but I was just so irritated. And, you know, the press is all covering this. Whitmer, you know, Shirky says Whitmer's batshit crazy and all this stuff. And I'm like, this is the last thing I need, because I need to get a budget done. I've got a lot of things that I need to get done. And so I got home from the trip and found out that his birthday was a couple of days later. And so I decided I'm going to send him a cake. And I had them decorate it with a big bat on the front of it. I said, "Happy 65th Bat Day," and sent it over to him, and just laughed at it.
Gorgeous.
And I think, you know, to deal with a bully, and unfortunately I've had a lot, one of them was the former president, to deal with a bully, taking their sword and making it your shield, having a laugh at them, or making it a call to action has been something that has helped me stay from throwing that counterpunch and stay focused on what I need to do. Because I don't have time for people that want to take me off of my mission. I got a lot of stuff accomplished, but I got a lot more that I want to get done.
I mean, you even, the one that's like the craziest to me, though, is you mentioned you even want to meet with the men who tried to kidnap and assassinate you. Why on earth would you want to talk with them?
Are you okay, Whitmer?
Yes. Please don't. Stay away.
Well, you know, one of the things that I love to do, the reason I love public service is I love people. I love to find out what's going on in people's lives. I love to ask questions. What can I do that'll make your life better? What is happening? You know, it helps me focus on what matters to people. And I'm always learning when I'm doing that. I think listening really is a superpower. And especially in public service, but in any field, right? And you know, I do listening tours across Michigan. Right now, we're doing one. It's called Seat at the Table. I'm just sitting in people's homes with them and asking them what's happening so I can understand. And I did this when I first ran for governor, and got all across the state of Michigan and asked people, if I'm lucky enough to get elected, what could I do that'll make your life better? And people will tell you if you ask them. The thing that I heard the most in 2018 was fix the damn roads. That's what people said to me over and over again. If you'd have asked me, would I run on a tagline of fix the damn roads, I would have thought you were out of your mind, but that's sure as heck exactly what we did. And it was in one of those conversations with a woman from Flint. We were in the Detroit Children's Hospital. And it can be really weird as a candidate. You go into places where you're not necessarily invited and you try to engage people in conversation. And at a children's hospital with a parent there, you know, you're just never sure what you're going to get. But she seemed like she was interested in talking. And so I said, yeah, I'm running for governor. And if I win this thing, what could make your life better? And she looked me in the eye and she said, fix the damn roads. And I was really surprised. I was like, okay, I thought we would talk about health care or child care. And so I said, all right, tell me more. Why is that the first thing on your mind? And she said, I'm driving from Flint to Detroit, back and forth every single day. I got a couple other kids at home in Flint. My young boy is here in the hospital in Detroit. He needed surgery, and so I'm doing this drive, and I hit a pothole, and it busted the rim on my wheel. And I spent the whole day trying to get my car fixed. It was money that came from rent and child care. Her kids at home, you know, she had to have a babysitter that whole time. The child in the hospital, she didn't see that whole day. And so for me, it was that moment that crystallized why fix the damn roads means so much, why it's so important. When the fundamentals are failing, it's the people who are on the bubble that hurt the most. And so that's why I like to ask those questions and listen. And so when it comes to these, you know, you think about what happened during COVID-19, and none of us wants to relive it, but governors across the country were getting all sorts of ugliness and threats. No one dealt with anything like I did. It was a uniquely scary situation in Michigan, fueled a lot by the former president, frankly. And out of 330 million people in this country, there were 14 that decided to kidnap and kill a governor. And I'd like to understand why. I'd like to understand what was going on. I don't want to sit with all 14 of them, and I certainly don't, you know, need to do it all at the same time. But, you know, there were a couple who did cooperate with the government. They showed remorse for what they were planning. They testified against their fellow co-conspirators. I'd love to sit with them and say, what was going on? What was happening in your lives? That was not a reasonable response to a governor who's telling you to wear a mask, because governors were telling people to wear masks all across the country. What was happening? And maybe I can learn something that'll make me a better governor or a better human being, or maybe I won't learn anything, but I'd like to try.
See those big boys cry. Thank you. Yeah. Okay, I want to challenge you here with your kindness. You start off your book with Gramma Nino, and we know she's a big inspiration to you, and your openness, I think, to finding the good in people. She said, even the meanest person might have pretty eyes. So my question is, what is the prettiest part of Donald Trump? Now we have till 8 o'clock.
I wouldn't say so. So I will give him a compliment.
This is for Nino.
Nino's looking down. You know, if there's one thing that he has shown he is really good at, it is reading what is happening in a situation. He doesn't use it for good. It is a superpower, but he doesn't use it for good. He uses it for his own benefit. But I do think that that's something that he does well.
Okay. Well done. I'm impressed. I'm impressed. All right, well, let's talk about the importance of humor in your life. Your book is very funny. And like you said, you talk a lot about standing up to bullies and sort of owning these insults. And I think that's a big part of why people get into comedy, too. One of my favorites is your family taking back the name Halfwits. You talk about that. I think that's brilliant.
So Donald Trump's given me a few nicknames over the years. One of the early ones was Gretchen Whitmer, which
You get it?
and the funny part about that nickname is it was not an insult because my sister and I call our kids half-wits because they're half-Whitmers. So, and we have a family cookbook called Cooking with Half-Wits. So when Donald Trump called me half-wit, it did not bother me.
Like, too late, motherfucker.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, and you've monetized some of these nicknames and misspeaks. Can you tell us a bit about that? Like, you made merch, right? That woman in Michigan merch?
Well, the Etsy community did,
The
yes.
Etsy community, yes, of course.
So, you know, during the pandemic, in the early days, New York City was so inundated with COVID cases, as you all know better than anyone. Chicago was, New Orleans was, and Detroit was. And so these were the big 4 cities that just were overwhelmed with COVID cases, and we had makeshift morgues outside of our hospitals. We were worried about doctors and nurses and, you know, respiratory therapists who were wearing the same mask for weeks on end because we didn't have masks and gloves. And I was on a call with President Trump and all the nation's governors from both sides of the aisle, and we were all asking, we need masks and gloves, we need to help our medical professionals. And he said on that call, I am not the nation's shipping clerk. You need to find these on your own. And I remember hearing that and like my stomach dropped because I couldn't fathom that we need these things and I can't get any help from the federal government. Now I'm supposed to go out and create a global procurement operation on the fly and try to find these things. And so we started going on the national news. You know, they were covering Detroit because it was so hot with COVID anyway, but they were asking for interviews, and I thought, this is my opportunity to go on and ask for help. I need masks and gloves, and so I did. And in the interviews, I observed that there was not a national strategy and that the states were on our own, and that really made Donald Trump angry with me. It was true, but he didn't like hearing that on the national news, and so he did a press conference, and he had Mike Pence in the press conference with him, and he said, and I tell you, Mike, don't call that woman from Michigan. And he was talking about me. And I remember hearing that, and just like my blood ran cold, and not because I cared what he called me. I just thought, maybe he's so petty, he's gonna withhold other things that the federal government is sending to us to deal with COVID. Maybe he won't declare an emergency and give me the resources that we need. Maybe he won't send, the things that he does have that he can send. But I decided, I'm gonna forge ahead because those interviews, we started getting things in. And so I thought, I'm just gonna keep forging ahead. And so I did the Trevor Noah show. And someone from the Etsy community in Michigan, like people started sending me stuff, that woman from Michigan. I've got coffee cups that say that woman from Michigan. I've got t-shirts and sweatshirts and baseball caps, etc. And so on Trevor Noah's show, I wore the shirt that said that woman from Michigan underneath it. And, people were like, wow. But it resonated with people. And to this day, I go to events in Michigan and people show up with that woman from Michigan t-shirts. So yeah, it's been a call to action. We found a community of support, and it meant the world in the middle of all those heavy times. Another nickname in that same chapter I talk about is another nickname I got during COVID, but that was bestowed on me with kindness. So I'm named after Grandma Gretchen and Esther.
Oh yeah, I was gonna, is your sister jealous? You have both grandmothers' names. So
Yeah.
What was left for her?
Liz, are you jealous?
Who are you named after, Liz? Who was left?
Well, Gretchen's middle name was Elizabeth, so Liz got Grandma Gretchen's
okay.
middle name.
She got a middle name.
So
that's good too.
And she, second child, anyway. So Grandma Gretchen was always adamant. Your name is Gretchen. It is not Gretch. That rhymes with wretch, and that is not pretty. So you are Gretchen. And so I've always like had this very bad reaction of when people call me Gretch. And I don't know many women that want big on the front of their nickname, right? But this nickname caught fire in Michigan, Big Gretch. And people started calling me Big Gretch. They were referring to me Big Gretch. A rap song, Big Gretch, was made in my honor. And I was at the office, and a woman I work with, Cecily, her name is, she's from Detroit. I've worked with her for many years. She's been a part of my team for a long time. And she's like, so what do you think about the nickname Big Gretch? And I'm like, I don't know. Like, what is it? And she goes, oh, you don't understand, Governor. The people of Detroit have given you the key to the city. You are Big Gretch. And so, like, Big Gretch is now my absolute favorite nickname. Grandma Gretchen is looking down, wondering what happened.
I'll take it. My mom similarly did not want me to be called Cess because of cesspool. And it's definitely the name that is my most common nickname. So now you talk a lot about your mom. Sounds freaking incredible. And you write about losing her to glioblastoma and how your mom still made you laugh in the midst of this terrible diagnosis. I don't know if you know this, so my cousin Owen passed away from glioblastoma in 2020, and his humor and his positivity during that battle, it's still like one of the greatest inspirations in my life. I want to aim to be like Owen. And at one point he said, minus the brain cancer, this has been the best year of my life. So I just wanted to see if you wanted to talk a bit about your mom and the way you guys use gallows humor to get through that tough battle.
Yeah, I'm sorry about your cousin. I know we had that in common, and it is amazing how many people have a similar story.
Sorry, they kept telling me I was going to be so frightened by the person that came out.
They did. They told her like 3 times, don't get nervous.
The man's coming. Okay. Man, that was, I guess, gallows humor.
So, I think one of the great things I learned from my mom is to find humor in almost any situation. When I was running for my first race for the State House of Representatives in 2000, my mom had been knocking doors with me, and she fed all my volunteers, and she was just always hilarious and fun to be around. And after my primary, she stopped showing up as much, and she wasn't feeling well, and I was busy and she was busy, so I didn't really, I wasn't on top of what was going on with her day to day as I may have otherwise been. And got a call a couple weeks out from my general election that she'd finally gotten an MRI, and she was being admitted to the hospital immediately, and dropped everything and spent time with her in the hospital. And I remember, she had her first surgery, and they did the pathology and said it was basically the worst kind of brain tumor you can have, and that she might only live for 2 to 6 months was the prognosis. And we sat on the bed and we cried, and I remember she turned to me and she said, I just want you to keep running. You're going to be the best senator you could ever be. And we both started laughing because I was running for the House, and I was going to be... And her husband came in, and we're laughing and crying, and he's like, what is happening? And we were laughing because she was just, it was a mistake. But throughout the months that happened, and she lived for about 17, 18 months, which was a lot longer than the prognosis. And much of it was because she had really good health care, she had a supportive family, and she had this incredible attitude. It sounds like she had a lot in common with your cousin. But all growing up, I suffered from migraines my whole life, and I always had headaches. And one of our movies we watched when I was, I don't know, maybe in middle school, maybe a little older, was Kindergarten Cop. Now, all right, there's one person who loves Kindergarten Cop.
And that's Arnold Schwarzenegger is here, actually.
Arnold Schwarzenegger is undercover as a kindergarten teacher. And he's got all these 5-year-olds running around like crazy. And there's a scene where he's got his head in his hands like this. And a little kid says, what's the matter? And he says, I have a headache. And the child says, maybe it's a tumor. And Arnold Schwarzenegger says, it's not a tumor. That's the only impression I do, and it's not that good. But thank you for your pity laughter. Anyway,
Oh,
so
got a standing ovation.
all growing up, whenever I had a headache, oh, it's not a headache. That's what we would say. We would laugh in the face of the pain or whatever. So my mom, during all of her treatment, would often say, "It's not a tumor." Oh, wait, it is. It is. So yeah, I think I learned from her that even in the darkest times, if you can find something light, it can help you get through it.
Yeah, some of my favorite laughs.
Yeah.
So finally, I know you've written an entire book basically answering this question, but it's a book tour Q&A, so I'm required to ask you, what advice would you give a young person who wants to make a change in their community, or even someone who's thinking of running for office, especially young women?
Jump in. Don't second guess yourself. I think one of the things I'm really grateful for is that there were so many women that have come before me. I'm one of 8 Democratic women governors in this country right now. It's the high watermark, which is kind of hard to believe, but also I'm proud to be among this incredible group of women. We all have benefited by the women who came before us. Jennifer Granholm was the first woman governor in the state of Michigan. I think of Hillary Clinton. She walked through the fire before any of the rest of us did and made it easier. And so I'm always mindful of how lucky I am that others went before me and made it easier for me to show up as I am. People say, oh, you're so authentic. I'm like, well, I don't have energy to be something I'm not, number one. And number two, I can show up as I am because other women have made it easier to do that and more acceptable. And I'm always thinking about who comes next and trying to make sure that, as you push open a glass door, that you prop it so that others can walk through it. It doesn't slam closed, and making it easier for the next generation. And I got to tell you, I spend so much time with my daughters who are 22 and 20 and women in their generation and between mine and theirs. And I am really optimistic about our future and about women's leadership. And I just always want to encourage young people, but women especially, to jump in. We have a tendency to wait for an invitation or someone else to make a suggestion. I didn't think about running for office. It was someone else who said, you should run, and it never had dawned on me. So I'm always trying to encourage people to do it. We have a tendency to think, I've got to have this degree or this lived experience or get to this age before I do something, where our male counterparts don't have that. They come out of the womb and think they should be president of the United States.
I can do it, yeah.
And so I'm always trying to, demystify. I think anyone in most high schools in Michigan today could go into the Michigan legislature and do a better job than some of them are doing now. So we should never hold ourselves back and just jump in and go. And when you're ready to do it, give me a call. I'll help you.
Yes. Okay, we'll start with this one. I don't know what it is, but I assume you will. Who is taking home the Paul Bunyan Trophy, signed Go Blue?
Paul is going back to East Lansing this year.
There you go.
All right, I know there's more Wolverines here than Spartans. This is a Michigan State rivalry. I'm a Spartan, so thank you. Go green.
Okay, this is a good one. What do you think is more important, turnout or convincing swing voters?
Well,
Ooh, the intrigue.
these are the hardest questions of the night. Paul Bunyan in this one. I don't think we can pick one or the other. I think this is going to be a close election. I know no one wants to hear that, but I really do. I was in Pennsylvania this weekend. I am obviously spent a ton of my time in Michigan. I'll be spending a little bit of time in Wisconsin. These races are going to be close. And so the base and the people that regularly vote have got to turn out, but we also have to make a seat at the table for people who are formally identify as Republicans but don't view themselves as Trump Republicans, independents, and even people who have disengaged because it's so volatile and it's so ugly and it's just, it's heavy. So we have to do both. We have to do all of the above in this election. And we're gonna.
And we're gonna. This is a good one in general. In the wake of the Flint water crisis, how do you approach restoring the affected citizens' faith in state government? And I think that could go for everyone's faith in government, right?
Yeah. It's hard. You know, when government fails and with such catastrophic impacts, it takes a long time to earn trust back. And it's very challenging. One of the hardest things about, taking office as governor is you inherit all of your predecessors' lawsuits. So while I opposed the emergency management law and the application of it to Flint under my predecessor, and I was the leader of the opposition, I was the minority leader in the Senate, as soon as I succeeded him in office, it was the people of Flint versus Rick Snyder became the people of Flint versus Gretchen Whitmer. And I hated that because I was on the side of the people of Flint in the first place. We've worked really hard to be present in the community and be supportive and to put resources into mitigating the lead poisoning in the children through nutrition and education and wraparound services. We've created a new model, I think, for maternal health and baby health in Flint, working with the doctor that discovered the Flint water crisis. We've done a ton of work, and I can see that it's had a positive impact, but this community was so let down in the worst way that I think it will take probably decades before trust is fully re-earned. And it won't be it'll be whomever comes after me will have to continue that work to try to earn back the trust. But when government fails in such a horrible way, earning trust in the first place is hard, but once you lose it, it's twice as hard to earn it back. And we've been focused on working at it, but it takes time and a lot of good work.
Yeah. Oh, okay. This is a great one. Lighten it up a bit. Governor Whitmer, are your dogs Doug and Kevin named after specific people, or were these randomly chosen names? Thank you for being you.
That's a great question. So yes, we have two Labradoodles. Their names are Doug and Kevin. Unlike my colleague from South Carolina, no dogs were shot in this book. Or goats. Oh, no, not South Carolina, South Dakota. Sorry, Christy Nome's book. No, so we've got two Labradoodles. When I got them, the first one we got in 2019 after I won the election to being governor, I told my girls, we will get a dog, and so we got our first dog. They got to name the dog. They, of course, wanted to name the dog after a character on The Office.
Okay.
They couldn't agree on Michael or Dwight or Phyllis, but they could agree on Kevin, who was one of the strangest characters.
The Office is Kevin.
So Kevin is from The Office, and then Doug. So during COVID, Kevin was my shadow, and I thought, I'm going to leave the house again one day, and this poor boy needs a friend. So we got a second dog, and they named him Doug, and he's named after Jonah Hill's character from 21 Jump Street.
Wow.
So his name is actually Doug McQuaid Whitmer. Kevin and Doug.
All right, our last one here, because this person really means it, because she underlined this. I could barely get out the door tonight to see you because I was worried about what my family would eat for dinner. How do you pick your battles on a daily basis?
Wow, you made the right choice tonight. They'll figure it out. No, now I'm on the campaign trail right now a lot with the Harris Walls campaign, and every time I talk to people, and every time I'm talking to our volunteers, I'm like, listen, we're hitting the doors, we got to get people registered, we got to get them out to vote. You need to take care of yourself too. The kids are gonna be okay if they eat pizza again tonight, but try to eat a damn vegetable every once in a while, because we gotta take care of ourselves. I think, everyone says, how do you find balance? There's no such thing as balance. It's figuring out what is important and what can slide a little bit. And I don't know what they ate for dinner tonight, but they're still gonna be okay when you get there. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us. I know you're,
Thank you,
you're doing